Hey parents, happy Teenager Tuesday and happy spring. We're here with Cory Burchard. Cory, if you don't know, March is kind of a weird, like maybe it's spring, but only spring later in the afternoons, and then in the mornings it's kind of chilly, but then you never know what you're going to get. But April for sure is spring. So welcome to springtime in Texas.
Man, so excited to be here. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And so even back in February, we already had pollen, like on vehicles, on porches. And so well in spring mode, past couple weeks for sure.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Parents, if you missed last week, Cory and I did a culture update, and it was great. And I didn't say anything dumb. And so now for this coming series, I've just asked Cory to kind of bring in, like, hey, what would be some tips that you've talked with parents about? You were youth pastor for a long time. Now you're associate pastor at your church.
Yep.
Give us a little bit of your background, then let's dive into some what you got for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, student pastor for over a decade. Recently have moved into our associate pastor role. Still well connected with students, but even families and parents have like a broader picture now in a lot of ways. And not only that, 2 kids myself, and one is on like that right at the beginning stages of preteen age, and it's fun. Like that preteen is like, one day it's like, Dad, let's build Legos, and the next day it's like, let's talk about these deep, profound truths of life. And the challenge is like the day I want to talk about profound truth, he's like, Legos.
Yeah.
Then when he's like profound truth, I'm like, dude, I wanted a Lego day, man. It's one thing to like have all this knowledge walking hand in hand with parents, but then to be a parent trying to do the very same things that we've been talking to families about is just really enlightening for sure. And just married 12 years now, and just greatest decision ever made apart from Jesus for sure. And just so not only are we trying to help parents, as they parent, but we're trying to be good parents, honored to be here, and that you asked me to maybe share a few things. And not that I'm any expert by any means, but I think there's a few things that like we can consider from like a value place as parents as we kind of navigate this journey of like raising our kids for Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
Oh, yeah. Well, and you're a very thoughtful guy, and thoughtful, I mean, like when you think about something, I think you think through that thing.
For sure.
Sometimes I can just have a thought and like a quick thought and be more of a bullet point person, where I think you add so much value through like when you like process a value for a family, and you think so much about how to be amazing in your family, that I just think you can add so much value to us here at Hope, and us on the podcast too. Yeah. So what would be one of those first things that you would be thinking about?
Just kind of in general, what I've become really excited about, but also I've just come to know like is that faith was created to work well in the home. Like it's how God created it, right? Like within a family, for that to be passed down, inherited, enjoyed, understood. And so honestly, like I know there's burdens and weight of figuring out like how do we figure out this Jesus thing in our house, but when you realize like God actually blesses and wants that, like it's the environment he created it for. It encourages us as parents and as leaders to go like, oh, God wants this to work here. It's actually powerful when it works here. And that kind of like opens our hands to think like, okay, if I'm not reactionary to everything I do in parenting, like a lot of times I'm thinking like, all right, we have a plan for maybe how we'll discipline, or we'll have a plan for what we want them to do. Yeah. But how often do we think through, what's my plan for discipling them? What's my plan for like helping them become more like Jesus? And so a few things I think, less of like what you have for your kids, but maybe it's like things that you as parents can do yourself, and then your kids benefit from it. Yeah. And so the first one, really, and we try to model this in our home, but really every time we talk to parents or dads or mom, like get to the root of this is like, how can we live transformed lives for Jesus in front of our families, like in front of our kids?
Yeah, that's good.
Can we let the gospel that's shaping and changing us to be more like Jesus actually on display for our kids? And kind of had this revelation where we enjoy like going to antique stores. Really Rachel enjoys. My wife goes, and I love her, so I love antique stores. Yeah. And
big fan of Rust.
You walk through it, and there's just there's everything in there is fire. There's just thousands of things on display, right? Yeah. Like there's so many things to see, and ultimately realizing like, okay, I don't see a purpose for any of this stuff in my own house though. Like I can't see how this would function within my own home. Like, why would I buy this to be placed on a shelf somewhere? And sometimes, like, I don't want my kids to look at me and go, hey, I know you talk about this Jesus, but I don't see the purpose that it's doing in your life.
Yeah.
So why would I want it inherently in mine, right?
Yeah.
So I want to live my love for Jesus in front of my kids.
Yeah, really visible, yeah. A mentor of both of ours, actually, something that she says is get caught reading your Bible, which is something we said on the podcast before. It's like, how often do we get caught being better said, like you're saying, how often do we get caught displaying the transformation that we believe in, that we say we believe in?
And it's one thing just to model like the things of God, right? And all those things of God are healthy tools, like prayer, reading, serving. But instead of just talking about or showing what you're doing, like, how do you share this is why I do it, or this is how I actually engage God with these things? And so even, Psalm 145 has been something big for us. Like, let each generation tell its children of your mighty acts. And I think sometimes we can talk about, hey, when I was a kid, like, this is how my life was and what God was doing. But how often do we maybe even say, like, hey, last week, this is what Jesus showed me? Yeah. Or, like, hey, this morning, this is how God was working my life. And so I think we think back sometimes to, like, when we first met Jesus, let's talk to our kids then. Or, like, when we first had, like, a discovery of faith, let's talk, like, but God's got something new for us every single day. And that's something we can bring to our kids. And I'm trying to do a better job of not just bringing them the good aspects, but also, like, my fallen aspects, because I'm realizing, like, I'm not a perfect father. Only God's the perfect father. Like, I'm helping my kids be a directional pointer to their perfect father. And so there are times where I go to them and I say, hey, I'm sorry I reacted foolishly. Or I reacted, improperly. Like, or you know what? I didn't listen really well right then. So I'm sorry. Like, I'm displaying also humility in front of them. And so this how of our personal walk with Jesus, like, opening up that conversation, like, hey, how do you spend time with Jesus? And then talking to your kids about how you do it, not just what you do, but how and why you do those things. And,
I love that. And I love, like, it's kind of like you're bringing vulnerability up versus, like, I guess from the outside, from a student's eyes point of view, seeing imperfections, but then that never being brought up, and it's like, man, because they're watching us for examples, right? Like, there's so much imitation. So the healthier parents can be at displaying, this is vulnerability, this is faults and what you do with faults. And like you're saying, like, how do you interact with God? Something we push all the time is, like, digest messages or Wednesdays or weekends, digest it as a family.
Continue the conversation for sure is one aspect.
Right. But then even also, like, what is there something consistently that you do as a family to take spiritual initiative that's not the initiative off of the church?
Correct.
Yep.
And I mean, that's the kind of, like, just rote thought is, like, if I want my kids to be good at sports, like, I get them a coach. And if I want them to be good at school, I get them a tutor, right? If I want them to be good at music, I get them, like, an apprentice. Like, if I want them to be good at faith, then I need to get them to a church. And it's like, well, you're the primary disciple maker of
for sure.
Help them grow and learn what it looks like to follow Jesus, but in doing it by displaying how you're doing that with your own life. And so, I think sometimes we can center on, like, the things, right? Like, okay, I need to just sit and have a talk or a prayer, like. And this is why this is a value piece, because if every day or every so often you can just have this thought of, like, everything I do is an opportunity just to display the transformative power of Christ in my story, then that becomes, like, a how on everything you do as a parent now, or everything you do as a guardian now. It's like, oh, this is conversation can display Christ's power in me. Like, the way we make this choice, and something like Rachel and I have just became okay with is, like, we don't have to give excuses, like, to other people why we live our family for Christ the way we do. Like, that's okay. Not everybody will understand, but we just have really settled on the fact, like, if we have weak convictions in our family or in our marriage or in our story, like, it leads kind of to a confusing faith potentially for our kids, like, we just want them to know pretty clearly, like, here's where some of our values are and this is what it looks like. And one of those is we just want to live our transformed lives in front of them as well as we can. Not every season is that everything, right?
Sure,
like, for sure,
perfect,
right? Like, but in knowing what they're going through, it's opportunities to be proactive and not just reactionary of, like, so I would say the first one is, like, be well aware that, like, you're modeling Christ for them as much as you are talking to them about Christ too. So,
which is always a good reminder, you know. And it's not, you know, probably a lot of parents out there aren't like, oh, I should do that. Right. I've never thought of that. But more often than not, there's so many things that we know, and we just need to be reminded, you know, to bring that back, initiate it again, or rethink it, think about it again. Man, that's good, Cory. Thank you for part 1.
Yeah.
Stay tuned in. Next week, we'll be back with Cory for part 2. For now, parents, remember, you got this. You can do this. You're not alone. God is with you, and so are we. Have a great week.